on, because there's generations before us of people who've died in ignorance, praying that one day the answers would come about what this world is, what this life is, and the lives that we're living. And we are now in that very age.
Amazing. Yeah, I totally agree. And, you know, when we were speaking before the show, you mentioned that this program's information is really a carry-on from the presentation that you did just a few months back in Los Angeles, called The Future of Mankind. And for those who might not be familiar with this, can you kind of relay some of the stuff you went through there?
Sure. I mean, that has been the biggest, do you know that over 80,000 people have watched that show?
Yeah.
In just the last 2.5 months or so?
Yeah.
I mean, I've just been inundated every single day. I get about 200 emails a day from people all over the world, and a good majority of them have been about this, web stream.
Amazing.
On Google, which is The Future of Mankind. Did you know that when I walked in, that it was 100 degrees that day? 100. We arrived. We'd actually done the talk the day before at the Living Temple in Huntington Beach, and just the drive up to Granada. I mean, it was boiling hot. I don't like heat.
Yeah.
And it was over 100 degrees.
What's that?
And then I walk into the room. It was so hot. I didn't even feel like doing the presentation. And there was all these cameras and everything set up. We didn't even know that Ted from Booktree and from Lost Arts Media was going to be there. He's a good friend, and he's a great videographer. We didn't even know that Ted was going to be there. And we walk in, and suddenly, he's there, and he videos it for me, and he gives me the copy, and he uploaded it to Google. So this is all done, spontaneously. I had no plan that it was going to be filmed. And now can you believe that 80,000 people have watched that?
Amazing. Yeah. It's really great.
This is fate. I look at it as very fated.
Yeah.
And really glad that we actually did get to film that so that the whole world could see it.
Absolutely.
But the actual talk, itself was basically on psychology. It was on the shadow personality. It was on why we have the political leaders that we do. It was very much about the spirit of rebellion. Because when we're talking about the coming of the planet Pluto, there's many subtitles underneath that.
Yeah.
And one of them is about the descent of the Holy Spirit, the age of revealing, the spirit of rebelliousness. I talked about the consensus trance.
Yeah.
I talked about the shadow personality, and about a better relationship, basically, that each human being needs to enter into a better relationship with what we would call our darker emotions. This is the angst, the loneliness, the fear, the anger, the violence. These are just terms we've given to parts of ourself.
Yeah.
The angry part of myself that I must suppress because it doesn't get me along with the status quo. Oh, the violent urges that I have. I'm not meant to have those. Jesus will be unhappy, and I can't get along in the workplace. So I better become a docile sheep. I better never ever speak up or even own my own emotions. I don't speak up to other people about how I feel. I say I'm just fine. And also, I don't admit to myself. I have no inner dialogue with myself. So that whenever these darker emotions show up, I medicate them out of existence.
Yeah.
So my talk there was about, for goodness sake, don't do that. These are aspects of yourself. These are your own children. In fact, they're not your children. They're your ancestors. These are ancestral parts of your own mind that are coming in to talk to you, to waken you up. But you have given yourself over, like a bullock, to the herd. You're listening to the crack of the whip.
Yeah.
You are under control. In order to belong to the consensus trance, you have stepped out of dialogue with your own self and cunningly given all of these incredible voices within yourself dark and evil names and thrown them into the shadow so that every time they, try to come close to give you counsel and education and spiritual awareness, you got the cork shoved into them, so that the barbed wire fence around your walls. So this whole concept that the way of the future, Pluto, is also about coming into a better relationship with this, sort of so-called quote-unquote dark side of the self.
Yeah. And during your talk, you spoke of the great need for psychological understanding of man and life, and this is what you're talking about now, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Psychological understanding. Jung himself just was adamant about that in the times to come, he talked about psychic epidemics. He talked about the fact that human beings are not really victimized by external circumstances anymore. It's reverse. People are in anxiety, people are in suicide, people are in depression, people are in delinquency, people are in dysfunction because of inner gales and storms and earthquakes, inner psychic. Now I know this is a message that maybe a lot Germans will totally understand. and perhaps the French, but, the rest of the world, England, Ireland, America, nope, it falls on deaf ears. They haven't a clue because the whole beginnings of that country has been extrovert. So we're dealing with a tremendous extroversion here, and there's a point, where we have to get back to some of these original principles of what the mind is and what the psyche is.
Yeah.
And also just how recent consciousness is. How very recent it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the selfless man is, as you say, is one who kind of ends up, I guess, unsane or insane or even neurotic, right? Yeah,
neurotic is a perfect term because it's not, we just use that word today jokingly. Can you believe it? Oh, that person's a bit neurotic. Yeah. Or, hey, that person's compulsive, obsessive.
Yeah.
And we don't even know what these words mean. But, the selfless man, which is the beautifully programmed automaton that the world works overtime to produce, and which you can see outside your door every person that passes by, the perfectly selfless man, as Ayn Rand called it. This is a narcissistic man, a neurotic man, a fragmented man who's basically listening and governed by his ego, not the self.
Yeah.
People have to understand there's a difference between the ego and the self. The ego is an image that you have about yourself, but it's not the self.
Mm.
The ego is just a thought within your head about something. The ego is just, say you take an oak tree. Well, you have an idea of an oak tree in your mind, and then you have a real oak tree that you're standing in front of and touching,
Mm-hmm.
or that you might climb up, or you might feel the wood, or you might actually smell the leaves. That's a real oak tree.
Yeah.
But the image in your mind of the oak tree is a product of the ego. Well, the ego also has within itself an image of you. But that image of you that the ego projects and generates is not you.
Mm.
And if you live in servitude to that image of yourself, then it's a narcissistic image.
Yeah.
It has no reality, so you're basically pursuing a dead loss. And you are also in contradistinction to yourself. You're in absence of selfhood, and you're in absence of the true Holy Spirit, which is nothing more than the self of a person. And then you enter into the, you may be qualified then to live in the carnival of this inauthentic life.
Yeah.
But you are without yourself. You're without your selfhood. And it's very important to understand this.
So
and it's not that easy to talk about what a self is, because
Yeah.
nobody else can give advice to another about what the self is.
Exactly.
This is something that you discover from within.
Yeah.
The self is not something that you're given at the time of birth. It is not something that you're going to be. It's not something that is created for you. It is something you create for yourself in this life through what we call experience. So the self is something you create through your experiences in this life. It does not come pre-packaged. It's not something that can be installed. And it's not even something that can really be spoken about to you by another person. The only way we can come across what the self is by discovering what the self is not, through what they call apophatic means. Apophatic, meaning by negation. You study what it is not to find out what it is. It's sort of like the Sherlock Holmes type of deductive reasoning. You discover what the self is not, so you study the ego. You study all the things that the ego is and what the ego has created. And in understanding those falsities, those aberrations, a human being can come across a definition of what self is. But you cannot turn towards the self itself and try to discover it, because, there's a shadow in the way. There's a lot of psychic complexes in the way of that.
On a side note, it feels like today we have these pre-packaged, basically, styles that you can choose from. The attitude and everything goes in basically pre-packaged stuff that I guess what you're saying here also, that you don't have to discover yourself, basically. You can just choose one of these packages today that is offered, basically.
That's absolutely right. That's what the media is. That's what government is. That's what teachers are.
Yeah.
First of all, they put you in uniforms in school, or at least they do in some countries, because that's the uniformatization that they want to get you to before they create those new packages for you.
Yeah.
So they strip you of your individuality. Hey, what's that? You're wearing a Rastafarian Bob Marley pin? Get that off. Hey, you're wearing a heavy metal t-shirt? Get that off. Hey, you're wearing rings on your fingers? Get those off.
Yeah.
Shorten that hair. Wear that tie. Where's your uniform?
Yeah.
How dare you come in looking like a goth? How dare you have colored hair?
Yeah.
So they're going to erase your individuality, as they have done.
Yeah.
And then they say, now, folks, you buy into this. So every day the media is modeling these inauthentic, images. Because remember, if your own idea of yourself is false, it's an image, then hey, you can have a whole image industry out there to create new ones for you, so that you don't even have to waste the energy even creating an image for yourself. They'll even save you that.
Exactly. Yeah. Amazing. And also, of course, you said that evil men in power get there because they're parasites feeding on a rotten and decaying body politic.
Yeah.
But they are put there by us.
That's right, and that's the key that we talked about in the web stream, The Future of Mankind. People can go on and watch that and see that analysis and digest it. Think about it, criticize it. Come to your own conclusions. Find out if I'm talking rubbish or I'm right. That if the human being is necrotic, if he's narcissistic, if he's cruel, endlessly sadistic to himself, if he's what they call masochism, if he's openly sadistic to others, violent, confused, frustrated, riddled with angst, medicated, tranquilized, then can that individual create the society that then acts upon him? Is it a vicious circle in which we create the leaders, you see? And this, because I actually believe, personally believe, that you shouldn't really blame the evil status quos that you see, because those are just the maggots feeding off the corpse.
Yeah.
The ego is just the ghost that has arisen from the grave of the self. So if you see vultures above carrion, don't blame the vultures. They're doing their job. In fact, they might even be agents of the Thanatos instinct. They may be agents in their own way, as bad as they are, presiding over the death of the rotten system.
Yeah.
But we have made that system rotten. We have made it anemic. We have anemic religions. We have false teachers, right?
Yeah.
We're living in abnegation of our own spiritual and moral duties. Look at today. Look where we are right now, coming up to Christmas. Look at the sanctimoniousness of these bastards, if I can use my Irish.
Yeah.
All year long, people live like sinners, Henrik.
Yeah.
All year long, it's greed, and push the other person down, and live immorally, and commit treachery, and build your own temples out of the ashes of the ruins of other people's sorrow.
Yeah.
But come Christmas, it's sing hymns.
Everybody's friends, yeah.
Yeah. Everyone, and suddenly give gifts and play the Handel record,
Yeah.
and play some Bach. You know what that is? That sanctimonious hypocrisy is what that is. And this is the kind of thing that human beings need to see about themselves. Don't get into judgment about it, just observe it.
Yeah, and this
see how hypocritical it is.
Yeah, and this must create some kind of schizophrenia within ourselves too.
It's the result of the schizophrenia.
Yeah.
It's the result of the inauthentic man.
Yeah. You speak also in your writing of the karmic man and the dharmic man, and that karma is related to guilt.
Oh yeah, we can turn to that subject. I wanted to do this show on two amazing things, Henrik, and that is, as you said, the outsider, which I think is a fantastic concept, and also the guilt complex. And this connects to an Indian terminology, karma and dharma. Everyone has heard about karma, but there's a reason why you haven't heard about its opposite, which is dharma. And you can't have a true understanding of what karma is unless you understand what dharma is. But I'm not going to be using these Indian terms because they're so loaded, and again, they don't mean much to the Western mind.
Yeah.
Again, using the Western tradition of psychoanalysis and psychology, we have this thing in the psyche called the guilt complex.
Yeah.
And it's connected to this theory of the outsider. And this is a perfect carry-on from the talk that I did in L.A. It's just, that was already 3 hours something long. We didn't have time to explore this, so I had to cut that off.
Yeah.
But people can consider our first show here a continuation, always to be listened to in connection with the Future of Mankind talk.
Yeah.
You see, we have been talking about the karmic man. Karma is nothing more than ignorance. And I mean that absolutely, period. Dharma is knowledge. The hidden masters use the same philosophy when they are constantly showing you that one of their major symbols is the checkerboard.
Yeah.
And people have had many interpretations of what this chessboard means. Is it light and day? Is it past and future? Is it good and evil?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not. It's about ignorance, which is the black squares, and knowledge, which is the white squares. The Illuminati and the Masons and the Atonists that run our